Salut, je m'appelle Narcisse Wanji, je suis réalisateur et je vous invite à suivre nos cultures.
Je m'appelle Dorine Roulachitse, je suis directrice générale d'Africalia et je vous invite à suivre nos cultures.
Bonjour, je suis Malik Kébé, je suis le directeur général du Fonds de développement des arts et de la culture de Guinée. Faites comme moi, suivons les actualités de nos cultures.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our discussion forum. This panel is organized jointly, as you've probably seen, by Africalia and Le Forum Culturel, a collaboration that falls within the scope of the celebrations of the 25th anniversary of Africalia. In 2025, Africalia looks back on 25 years of cultural development, cooperation, and support to cultural and creative industries. All throughout the year, there's special events taking place all over the African continent and in Belgium, and like this panel series, online. Together with Le Forum Culturel, on the occasion of its 25th anniversary, Africalia also looks ahead and opens up the discussion on ways to tackle contemporary challenges facing the cultural and creative industries. So yes, thank you so much to both of these organizations for the cooperation with African cultural industries, but also to these conversations like this, which I think are quite essential. Speaking of which, let's just quickly go over the topic before I introduce you to our panelists. So this panel will explore how new technologies are profoundly transforming the cultural and creative ecosystem in Africa, and of course elsewhere. We will examine how digital arts can contribute to strengthening CCIs, transforming narratives, and lifting up African heritage. However, while technology opens up a myriad of opportunities for innovation and economic growth, it also poses significant challenges, which we'll get into today. So I wanted to introduce the panelists. We'll start first with Lodi Matsalela from South Africa. And she is at the forefront of Africa's digital creative industries As program lead at the Digital Content Hub at Chimologong Precinct, which is a WITS incubator, she champions initiatives such as Digital Lab Africa and operates as a partner in the Afri Creative Consortium. Her commitment to shaping the digital landscape extends to her role with the Fakugesi African Digital Innovation Festival. She is an award-winning producer and filmmaker, and she's also deeply engaged in the evolving discourse on content creation in the age of AI, exploring how emerging technologies can expand narrative possibilities. Then we have Selassie Awiti from Ghana, and he is self-taught, multidisciplinary creative leader specialized in virtual and augmented reality, digital storytelling, and immersive product design. As the founder and creator of Dobison, Ghana's leading XR company, he leads cross-functional teams in creative, innovative digital experiences for brands across Africa, blending technology, creativity, and collaboration to build impactful products across industries. He's also committed to mentoring world-class African talent, volunteering with NGOs, and exploring the continent to share its stories with the world. And finally, Brian Funde from Kenya. He is a creative technologist and agent of change dedicated to accelerating the adoption of XR technologies across Africa. He is the co-founder and CEO of Black Rhino VR. He aims to design, democratize, demystify, and deploy XR and equip the next generation with essential skills to drive economic transformation. By fostering new ideas, business models, and job creation, he's positioning Africa's youth at the forefront of global technological advancement, ensuring they actively shape their own futures. He is a board member of the Global Future Council on the Future of the Metaverse at the World Economic Forum. So, as you can tell, this is a formidable group of people working on our continent in the digital sphere. And I'm really excited to hear their thoughts on this topic and a variety of questions that I've put together. So starting first, I thought that we would start with the bottom of the ecosystem, the most important sort of strata, which is education, and ask you all, which is a really nice way as well of us getting to understand how you came to occupy these roles. How did you enter the digital arts? Education in the digital arts isn't accessible in every country. In South Africa, we're very fortunate, but I know that elsewhere in the continent, it's not so easy. And of course, you know, we're also facing currently the fact that even when one pursues education, once you're actually in the field, that education might not be as relevant as you thought. So should we start with you first, Lodi?
Yes. The question being how important education is or training is within the digital sector.
Well,
Miriam,
yes, and access to it. How did you get into it? What were your experiences? I mean, obviously at Chimologong, it's an educational facility, so you understand the value of it. But what is available, and how did you gain the skills that you have?
My story is a little longer, but I think what I'll do is just talk about the genesis of Chimologong Precinct and why the space was created by a university that is in the business of education. But the Chimologong Precinct was started by Professor Dwalatsky, who came from the School of Digital Arts, and he and his co-founders identified and realized that if South Africa or even the continent and anybody on the continent who wanted to participate in what they called at the time the fourth industrial revolution, if we were to participate in a meaningful way, there would have to be interventions with regards to the skill sets that existed on the continent. And that, unfortunately, university degrees were not enough to make sure that the continent was at the cusp of what was happening and could participate in a meaningful manner and contribute with innovation. And so they started Tshimologong Precinct, I think close to 14 years ago. So I work at the festival, which then came after. And so the precinct was existing, and then there was a festival and all of that. So that's the history, is that innovation and technology is evolving and changing so fast that unfortunately a four-year degree, while it is critical, especially in AI, we almost don't have enough computer scientists and data scientists to engage with the innovation within AI. And everything else, it was evolving and changing so fast that we needed to accelerate the talent that existed. And so this is why Tshimologong was created. So most of my work is in designing and facilitating incubation and training programs for individuals that some of them have got the degrees, some of them are self-taught. The most important thing that I realize most of these people have is that they're curious and they want to innovate, and they are not afraid to play with technology that they may not be familiar with. And we facilitate their progress and attempt to accelerate, I guess, their own education in whatever interventions we can create. And I work specifically in the Digital Content Hub. And so we deal specifically with the creative digital art practitioners. And so education is important, it's needed, especially when we're talking about AI, because the level of skill set that is required there is a little more advanced. But I think for everything else, like you, my fellow panelist, Selassie will talk about, he's a self-taught XR producer and director. And so that curiosity is important as well, especially because the innovation and the technology changes so fast. So that's, and I myself am a self-taught filmmaker, content producer, really. It was the curiosity, I think, that drove me. And also there were other incubation and training programs that allowed me to bypass the traditional forms of education to allow me to participate. I mean, I have since gone on to get my master's in film and make sure that I add on to what I had taught myself. But it's a curiosity. It's a combination of that, those two things: the curiosity and then the education, and then of course spaces like Tshimologong that will assist an individual that sits in between and has got the talent already.
Thanks so much, Lodi. Yeah, Selassie, this is probably a good time for you to enter into the discussion and share your experience. We've heard that you self-taught. Is there a Tshimologong type of organization in Ghana that facilitates what Lodi is saying, this kind of bridging between a formal and informal education and working in the digital spheres?
Yes, I mean, currently now there are organizations and groups like that provide those kinds of support to upcoming creatives. Unfortunately, when I was starting out, I didn't have access to that, or I didn't know it existed. And for me, my journey kind of, I would say I kind of had an educational path I took, and then I also had the creative pathway that I took, and they were kind of independent of each other, because education-wise, I enjoyed science and biology. I really loved nature and all of that. So that was where my education was focused. But growing up, I was really into art, music. But I could paint and draw. But one thing I also loved was music. but I couldn't play any musical instrument, right? And that is where that was one of the first times I started like playing with software, creative software, experimental with creative software. I remember just then there was Fruity Loops. I think after a while they changed their names to FL Studio, but way back maybe early 2000s thereabout, and I started playing with that, and that was where I realized how much software or technology could enable creativity. In that I couldn't really play any instrument besides drums, but I could arrange a whole piano arrangement in the software and make beautiful music. And it moved from like creating stuff for myself to now like when I start sharing the music I was creating, like people are interested in it, people are singing and rapping on it. Then I all of a sudden now I'm a producer because I make beats and people are asking me for beats. And that was like that was how I started. It wasn't easy because back then I think our family had just one computer, and you can't have like my parents, they have in their mind this small boy is coming to mess up their PC, because I also used to take apart like devices a lot just to know how they work and stuff. So I had to kind of sneak to learn how to how to create music with a software. And that was how I fell in love with teaching myself stuff, because I realized that if I'm determined enough, I will be able to do it without and with the support of software without having to like get official tuition for it. So it moved from creating music, and then I started, because I could already paint. Then I started experimenting with Corel Draw, and then I eventually moved into the Adobe suite of software, and that was how I was just learning, And all that time I was learning these digital softwares, and then I realized that I didn't want to end up in a medical field or in the science field. I loved it, but really what I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing was being in the creative space. So upon graduation, I went to a marketing agency, and I told them, hire me. And they hired me because like I used to work with them and they saw like what I could do. So they just hired me, and then I started creating content for them. And over there as well, that was where I did a lot of learning on the job, because they had like really big clients, and they'll go for the client meetings, go and promise something amazing to the client, and then they'll come back and say, okay, solve it. So, and it was that kind of constant pressure for 3 years. We worked with so many brands, did so many things, and it made me learn really fast. And then in the process of all of that, Facebook launched 360 photos on their platform. Then I was tasked to make something out of that, and that was really my first interaction with VR content. And once I touched it, I was like, I think this is where I should go, and I just left my old job and went on to like focus on Dobison. So it's really been a journey of finding what works with what I already know, like not being afraid to play with the software, like Lodi said, learning intensely on the job, knowing what brands want and being able to provide that, or learning the specific skills that I need to learn to provide that, and throughout all the whole process, exercising my creative muscles. So that has been what really the journey has been.
Thanks so much, Salafi, for sharing that story. I think it's a story of many digital creators on the continent. And as Larry said, it's driven by curiosity, but also it seems that it's also about being a self-starter, creating an opportunity for yourself in a role that didn't exist, like at this marketing company, and then going on to VR after that, starting your own company. Brian, yeah, I'm interested to hear about your journey, but also you seem to be playing quite a fundamental role in Kenya in uplifting the youth and sort of increasing opportunities for access. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you so much for your question, Mary. And I would say that, to be honest with you, I can relate so much with Selassie's story because I'm more or less coming from the same background. My background is in music. As a DJ, as a radio DJ, and as a club DJ. I mean, I DJed for very many years, but I've often joked around how I got into XR, and I said I graduated from the prestigious School of YouTube Premium, because really you can see, and Shimalong, and there are very few organizations like position like Shimalong where they're able to create spaces, safe spaces where people can be able to access these technologies. I mean, you must imagine when we started 10, almost 11 years ago, XR was not even considered nascent. There were very few organizations globally, especially with African representation. So out of curiosity, I would say that yes, I went to a traditional, let's say colonial legacy sort of schooling system. I went to the Nairobi University. I studied philosophy and something called epistemology, which is really the study of knowledge. And as a philosophist back in the day, the reason why I got into this program is I've always thought and questioned life in very many dimensions. And halfway through my course, I honestly started introspecting around my role as an African towards, giving, not just giving back, but creating a conducive environment where people can be able to build value and let value circulate so that we can all be able to benefit. So tragedy happened in my life. I survived a terrorist attack, which was in Nairobi at the Westgate shopping mall. I was stuck there for 6 hours. I mean, and this really just snapped something in me. And I just want to say, if there's anyone listening out there, that, by the way, you need to understand that the gift you have is now, today. And what you do now really will determine a lot of stuff in your future. And don't take the gift that we have now. And I always say there's a cliche, and we say the gift of today is called the present because it's a gift. And a lot of people are not able to access that. And this snapped something in me. And I was like, I almost died. I was seated next to the terrorist for about 2 minutes. He was literally next to me for 2 minutes, and I could hear him breathe. I could hear him shooting to people. And when I walked out of this, I had a discussion and conversation with God. And I really just asked him to give me another second chance to build this individual that would impact the world in a different way. So I just started doing research, and together with my business partner, at that time, Facebook had acquired Oculus for about $2.3 billion. And we were asking, why would such a technology company invest into a VR company? We didn't even know what VR was. So at Westgate, I used to work for a brand. I was a brand manager for a company called Converse for many years. My background is also in marketing. So I resigned from my job and I said, I'm going to start this VR thing without knowing and understanding what VR was. I remember having a conversation with my wife, who's a teacher and a principal. She's running a school, and I was talking to her about, I want to go and set up a business in VR. And she told me, okay, babe, I believe you and you seem so excited, but what is VR? I couldn't even explain what VR was. And I just told her, I'm going to resign from this job and I'm going to start this thing. And when we started, we really didn't know where it was going. But my marketing background also taught me on how to be prudent about running a business, from building a SWOT analysis, running a feasibility study, looking at what the go-to-market strategy was. At least I had those particular skill sets. So we did a whole feasibility study on XR in not just Kenya, in the region, because we were targeting the region. And we realized there's a huge gap that we needed to fill. And this huge gap would only be filled by someone who's selfless, someone who doesn't want to look at how you can be able to just make money, but build a larger cohesive ecosystem. So from the get-go, our ethos has always been each one, reach one, teach one, where you can be able to create some form of grassroots mentality, because the biggest barrier to entry of technology is psychological. Because when you look at digital technology, it has this sort of colonial approach to it, where Africans' role is always going to be on a consumption role as opposed to a production role. And it was important for us as an organization to address that asymmetrical relationship, where people think that digital technology for Africans has to be consumed. So from the get-go, we realized and we knew that for us to be able to build value, we have to create a perfect balance between running a sustainable business model and also giving back to the ecosystem and trying to build value for them. So for the many years, as much as we've been building content, we've also been building infrastructure to help build an industry from the ground up. So I believe that the seismic shift of change within the society is actually going to come from education, because whether or not it's from organized colonial legacy system where people go to schools, or to a more decentralized, democratized access to technology, because the internet has provided us with tools that are scalable anywhere in the world. I can be able to access this information at the palm of my hand using my mobile phone, especially in Africa. So we realize that we can be able to leverage this sort of learning and democratize access to it by building platforms that individuals can learn about XR. And that's what we set out to do. It's been a daunting task sometimes when we think about what we are trying to do, but also God has been very gracious in the resources that we've gotten. And I really believe that that seismic shift, there's a huge disconnection between the skills that are acquired in institutions of higher learning and the skills that are actually required in the market. So looking at this as a gap, we also, how would you say, it's funny that they say God uses the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. I mean, how would you say like a self-taught person in extended reality is giving master classes in universities on how you can be able to adopt the technology? So this goes to show that right now, if you're able and willing to reduce your psychological barrier and smash your ego, then you can be able to teach yourselves. And after that, you can be able to teach other people. So this, for me, this question, Mary, is really close to my heart, because I found value in teaching myself. And in that way, I've been able to teach other people and a larger team on adoption of technology.
Thanks, Brian. It sounds like you having real impact there in Kenya, and as you say, that a formal education isn't really always relevant in the workplace, but at the same, particularly as things keep changing. And I had wanted to look at that, how things keep changing and how all of you keep up. But I feel like time is already escaping us, and I'm quite interested in exploring this idea of the asymmetrical sort of dynamic that you were talking about, Brian, that Africans being consumers, and speaks to one of the questions that I was quite interested in, which relates to some of the research I've been doing, where a lot of and this is just particularly in South Africa, where a lot of the digitally based companies, gaming companies, animation, they're so focused on servicing companies elsewhere. So not necessarily just about Africans consuming, but African companies spending, or their growth is so dependent on providing services for companies outside of the African continent. I don't know if this is the experience in Ghana and Kenya, but how do companies balance that need to create their own IP, but then also to remain sustainable while doing so? I'm sure it's quite a balancing act. Perhaps Selassie, you'd like to pick up from here?
Yeah, sure. So for us, when we are building VR games, one of the core things that I always have at the back of my mind, and I tell my team, is for every game that we build for a brand, we must build it like we are building our own game, in the sense that, yes, so for us, we don't, first of all, our key target is local brands or international brands that have a local presence, because they, in our experience, they have some understanding of virtual reality or some understanding of its use cases, so it's easier to like deal with them and push those agendas. Also, we have the businesses with our agencies that get us brands, and in all of those dealings, the agenda is we are building a game for the brand, but we are also building it in such a way that it is, we are going to, once it's built for the brand, we are going to take it back and then repurpose it as our own game. So all the games that we build for them, from we built Soccer Shootout for Coca-Cola. We started building it as our own VR football game. And then if a brand comes on board that, okay, we have this idea and it's around sports, it's around soccer, what can you do for us? So, okay, we have these different games that we've built internally and we can rebrand them for you for your use case. So, and that is how we deal with building projects for external brands while retaining our own like IP, right? And it's been a very successful model that we've used. And through that, we built, like I mentioned, the soccer game. We've also had games where we have music artists featured in the game, where we also have deals with them to like feature them within our project. So we are very much centered on having our own IP, but then looking at how we can also monetize or commercialize that IP that works with other brands as well. So that's how we mostly deal with it. And anytime and anything we actually build in VR, with the exception of like the video, the 360 content, everything that we build, we still kind of repurpose it in one form or the other, right? Such that we still have some ownership of something, or in essence, the true essence of the platform or the content is owned by us, but we are only adapting it to the needs of the clients or the brands as and when they request for these things. So that we still have our stuff, and then we also have the client stuff that they can use for their own purposes. So that's one of the ways that we deal with IP and also like external clients.
Yeah, thanks, Lassie. That sounds like a good way of using the opportunity with your clients to create your own IP. And Brian, what's the look, the overview in Kenya around this particular issue, and specifically within the context of your business?
Interesting question. I mean, if you have friends who are Kenyans who are doing business, they would tell you that Kenya is a very peculiar market. There's some indicators that work in other places, but they don't work in Kenya. One of the things we came to realize is, as much as organizations are willing to adopt technology, there's also technology anxiety, the fear of these technologies, the fear of the unknown. And this really is a stumbling block to adoption, because these people don't even know how to apply the technology. So because of that, we started creating what you call open days, where we would have an open day for brands, for organizations, where we would have demystification sessions. Just talk to different brands and call them and say, okay, if it's Coca-Cola, we would like to do a demystification session around what you call extended reality technologies, either to your marketing team or to your product development team, for you guys to see how it can be applied. So this for us has led to a certain form of success, because it really just switches the mind into the possibilities of what can be achieved within these organizations, and try to adopt the technologies across the different value chains within these organizations. So that has really helped us a lot, where we do these sort of engagements and educational opportunities for these organizations. But I must say, for the case of Black Rhino, really 90% of our business doesn't come from Kenya. So the way the company has been organized, we have 3 pillars. There's one pillar, which is content. We've always been known as producing content, whether or not it's 360 storytelling, which is our lowest hanging fruit. And then, of course, we have VR and AR games and solutions. And then we have a second pillar, which is more or less ecosystem building. We have an extended reality lab. And the reason why we invested in a lab is that a lot of people in the ecosystem don't have a place where they can access information or technology, because we have to realize that these technologies come at a very, very high capital expense cost. So young people who want to get into this technology, they might access the information online, but for you to access these rendering machines, 360 cameras, these really hardcore GPUs are not accessible. So we created a space where young people first can access at no cost. So they come to our lab, they experiment, and they build a community. What's so important is to build a community of practice that can be able to share information, that can be able to tackle these problems. And then the third pillar of the organization is technology. It's not enough just to let people access the technology, but give them the tools to build the technology. And some of these platforms that exist on a fundamental and infrastructure perspective were not built for Africans. We are just adopting to what was built based on a target audience that was in the West. So for instance, one of our platforms is called Media with an AR. That is an AI-driven platform using computer vision that allows young people to rapidly build and scale augmented reality without the need for code. When you look at code is a huge barrier to entry because there's people who probably don't have their IQ, they don't have patience, they don't have access to code. So we built infrastructure is so important for us. So we put a huge emphasis on building infrastructure so that with the grassroots fundamental level, we need to build that sort of pipeline so that when people come and engage in the technology, it's not, like I said before, from a consumption point of view, but from a production point of view. So unfortunately, 90% of my clients are really not in Kenya. I've worked extensively in the region, in about maybe 16 African countries, building solutions for different organizations. But that doesn't mean that there's no value in Kenya. It just means that my market is a peculiar market that requires a lot of effort to create adoption. But also there's something people don't talk about. It's the politics of doing business. If you're not in the politics of doing business, you can compromise your values. And the reason why I haven't been as successful in my country as I have been in other countries is simply because this peculiar market demands a certain level of politics that I don't wish to play that sort of politics based on the values that we have. So because there has to be a paradigm shift based on how people think about the technology itself. You cannot afford to be selfish with this technology because at the end of the day, sooner or later, it's going to be ubiquitous. A lot of people are going to access it, whether or not you're a gatekeeper. So this has been my sort of experience with XR, that we've created spaces of trust, spaces of where young people can be able to collaborate, but also we educate a lot of people, hoping in future that it is going to translate into creating a sustainable business model for us.
Yeah, super. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, that's quite interesting, the conditions in Kenya, and yeah, why it's difficult to do business there. Lodi, Brian raised the value of the lab setting, which I think is a topic you can really speak to, but perhaps tying it into the thread that we're exploring, how are you encouraging, or how are you encouraging young entrepreneurs in this area to pursue servicing clients wherever they might come from, within South Africa or beyond the borders, which seems to be the case for most established companies, because always the focus on creating their own IP. Yeah, I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on this.
I think I'm of the same view as Brian, because owning IP is peculiar, especially, and I would say across the continent, coming from filmic background and just content creation, because if there's no infrastructure and no platforms from which a person who owns IP will benefit from, there's no point in having it. We're being monopolized still by very many organizations. I mean, we're looking at the deal that's about to be completed between MultiChoice and Canal Plus, and which will have implications on Showmax, which is the only other streamer. And now Canal Plus and Netflix are talking. None of that makes sense. That means there'll be one monolithic platform, which now includes gaming as well as animation and all the other types of content that would be created, or original content that could be owned by a producer on the continent. And I'm talking from experience as well. So for a very long time, the holy grail was you must own your own IP, and then you will be given the opportunity to be able to exploit it. And a lot of the masterclasses that I get asked to do, I'm like, I start with this is not Hollywood. We are not in America. There is no guild. There's no studio system. In fact, we are part of that system. We contribute close to 70% of their revenue. We are building that system over there that everybody's saying is falling apart. That's what we're contributing to. We don't have our own infrastructure yet. And if you're really honest about that, then you really begin to understand how you can find interesting opportunities, platforms for distribution, other exhibition platforms that you might create. You have to think outside the box. That's just by virtue of being on the continent. And I think owning IP and expecting an infrastructure or like literally a system to just plug it into and you watch the money roll in, it just doesn't work. I think as far as I always say maybe original or authentic content, and not necessarily owning the IP. So I'm more interested in also the kind of content that we're creating. It's not just that you own it. Is it authentic? Does it distinguish itself from the, globalized idea of what storytelling is? I sit on a lot of panels. We're always looking through proposals and the idea of what a fantastical Africa looks like. There's only one, it seems. Okay, it's only one. We're soldiers. It's even if it's placed in the future or it's a period piece, it's like one, it's the same story. And that same story is just a derivative of what Hollywood or even maybe Asian cinema may have told us is what story is. So for me, it's not just IP, it's original content as well. And I think once we understand what original content is, owning it, because that one project or that one African game that everybody's like, okay, I want to play that game. If it is told or created authentically, and if there's resonance in it, people will engage. And then you won't need that platform because people will insist, yeah, I'm playing on your console, but I want to play that game, which you will then have to make space for. Because yes, there are huge barriers to entry, like corporate monopolies that just don't have space for a young game dev in South Africa that's done a game about taxi wars, which I've seen a similar game in Kenya too. And they are really, really dope games. I would love to see that. I was looking at GTA clips on TikTok. I could not believe the racist stereotypes that existed in that game of Black African-American women in particular. And I mean, that's in like one of the most popular games in the world. So I'm like, it's maybe I'm more interested in authentic storytelling, in original storytelling, because whether people know it or not, and I've in a way proven that myself in work that I've created, that when a person can feel represented in the content that they watch or in content that they engage with, they really will make the exception and be like, no, I prefer this. Because I didn't know I could be seen in a game. I didn't know I could be seen in a film. And that resonated with me. And I didn't even know that this entire time I've been invisible. So the IP, until that infrastructure is there, I can tell you from experience, you can own your IP and you'll still not get a good deal. You'll spend millions on the project and you will go to a Showmax or you'll go to a Netflix and they will say, well, we can pay you hundreds for millions that you've spent. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter what currency. You've spent a lot of money on this. You own it. It is yours to exploit. You've invested in it. You're not going to get what is promised because we don't have that kind of system. They have the upper hand. They'll decide whether they're going to facilitate you or not. And I think it will be similar for when, people have more access, or the idea of immersive works is something that exists within a household. What we place on those consoles, what we place on those headsets, that monopoly could continue. And we are seeing it within games. I mean, it's hard to tell that truth and then still encourage people and still be like, but that isn't a reason to stop. And so I have to balance this is the reality. Just if we can just get rid of, it's not Hollywood, this is where we live. You in your curiosity have decided to place yourself in a digital space, and that is amazing, and you see all the potential and all the opportunities. However, you also have to participate in a way in creating that infrastructure yourself. You have to participate in creating community. You have to participate in creating that informal guild or collective that advocates for what you want this industry to look like moving forward. You actually have a say in it right now. And that's how I balance. Not to say they aren't the people who are far ahead. They are the game developers, and especially in Cape Town, who are selling their content overseas, who are working with those big studios. But they're also selling very specific content that speaks to that market. You wouldn't necessarily be able to place that content or that product on the continent and say it resonates with the people that are here. And so that's why I differentiated original works versus IP, the infrastructure that doesn't exist, which is fine. That's not a bad thing, and how we need to participate in it. It just means you have to be an agile creative. I mean, Selassie and Brian can talk about it. You're not just a creative. I'm not just a writer. I'm a producer as well. And I'm not just a producer. I'm running a business. I'm not just running a business. I'm also very aware of what my distribution channels are with regards to the content that I am. I negotiate my way the whole way. Just be agile. Just be open to what is actually possibility and not a hindrance. I don't know if I answered your question. I wasn't speaking specifically to the labs, but the idea of owning intellectual property is something that I because for a long time I chased that idea. I was like, I'm going to own my work. I'm going to, and I do own. I have a catalog of work that I own, and it sometimes it's sitting still, but it's just in a drive on a cloud somewhere for years. And then every now and then somebody's like, I saw this and I would like to get it. And I'm like, right now at this point, I belong to a reference library of films or content. And I own archival work. Let's say I own archival intellectual property, because that's what it ends up being. So there's a balance.
Yes, thanks, Lodi, for that. I really appreciate this idea of encouraging, and it speaks to what Brian was saying as well, that actually the drive to, I think young people probably enter with this drive to create their own IP, but the reality is that that's going to be much later down the road, and it's about creating this community and being agile. So I thought with our last, we slowly, the time is just flooding away. So I thought perhaps with these last sort of 10 minutes to look at how do we grow the digital spheres on the continent. Is AI going to Brian, you were saying that AI really empowers young people who don't have the ability or capacity to learn coding. But then speaking to what Lodi was saying around authenticity, where does AI limit that? I'd really love to hear your thoughts on whether AI, we worry about the jobs that it might be taking from people, but then maybe it really speeds up the time and allows companies to grow in different ways and create other jobs. I'd really love to hear from, perhaps we could start with you, Selassie, your thoughts on this.
Well, when it comes to AI, I mean, I think that it definitely has its good sides and its bad sides for sure. And as a business owner and as a creative, you have to like balance the two, because obviously from the creative side, you would know that AI can complement your capabilities and speed up your workflow. But on the business owner side, you know that it can also optimize your team, help reduce costs. So it's about those two things. I think that, and I personally think that at this point, everyone who has a job should be considering how AI can improve their capability, because it's kind of like a superpower of sorts, a superpower that you have to like have reins on and still be in charge of the whole process. Because if you don't, then you are losing a lot of that authenticity that you have and letting it run the game. So it can augment your capabilities, it can speed up workflows, but if you don't adapt to changing technology, it can also take your job in that sense. If you're thinking about loss of jobs, and the truth is, with throughout the ages, with new technologies, there have been like layoffs, and there have been jobs lost, and there have been new types of jobs also created as a result of this new technology. So it's not, we shouldn't just look at the jobs that will be lost, but also the kind of jobs that will be created. And if you're really forward thinking, you would be preparing yourself for that era, right? Which I hope that all creatives or all business owners are doing, because it's really, in the end, it's really a tool. Now, what you let the tool do for you or do to you is, in a sense, up to you, and you would have to like really embrace it and use it to your very best capabilities. If you are in a role that you think can be replaced by AI, you have to upskill, and that is where for me, that is one of the things that's being self-taught or self-learning or self-teaching has like helped me, knowing that once something is coming, I have to be sharp and get ahead of it, right? So that I'm never in a position where I'm getting redundant or obsolete. Like, if new tech is there, we are also there. And that is like what the mindset is. So, and that is what everyone really should use. There may be, judging from history, there will be some cases where jobs will be lost. But we need to definitely find the balance. I think that some companies are putting in guardrails to control how their staff access AI and how they use it to ensure that it doesn't maybe there's no data leaks with the data sharing that you have to do to access AI, and also you don't stifle the creativity of your people, because it can be abused. So it's all about finding the balance and knowing that it's technology. And years before, when new technologies came, there were also these same worries, and people lived through it and people adapted. You have to be very ready to adapt, is what it is. So that is what my personal views are.
Thanks for that, Selassie. Brian, is AI transforming your business? I'd love to hear what your experience is.
First, I just wanted to say Selassie spoke eloquently around what really is the current state of AI from adoption perspective to how people relate to it. I totally agree with everything that he said. For me, when I think about AI, I also think about something that is more or less a conundrum that we are in Africa. And this is more than just my organization. I'll go back to the impact to my organization, but this is more than just an organization. We seem to be in a quagmire. And the idea behind it is that in Africa, talent is equally distributed, but opportunities are not. What sort of opportunities can we leverage this technology to create? And for me, AI is about opportunity. Like Selassie clearly articulated, if you look at this technology and you have to be a forward-thinking individual and think how you can use it as a tool, not for as an enabler and not a disabler. So he clearly articulated that young people, and it boils down to mindset. I mean, you have to change your mindset on how your relationship with technology is, how you perceive these tools. Yes, there are going to be jobs that are lost, but there are also opportunities for you to get into gaps, fill gaps that already exist. So this is a classic example where there are opportunities that they're not equally distributed. Then how do you create this opportunity for people to access infrastructure around it? Every time I'm using AI, I'm always thinking about this AI is learning more. It's, again, an asymmetrical relationship. It's taking from me more than I'm taking from it. There's all these large language models in the back, and there's all this information that it's data mining. Governance still in Africa, governance around AI is still really, policy is still trying to catch up with this technology. And I want us to just think about something creatively. This week we saw Google launch Veo that is building video content from prompts. I mean, it's insane what this engine is doing, but think about it. This is a very simple perspective. Anything that you're seeing AI do right now is at its worst. Think about it in the next 5 years. It's going to be on steroids. It's going to be super intuitive. It's going to be, so it's incumbent on us as Africans to also start seeing how we can build opportunities around this AI. Work together. I think the biggest challenge is we've been working in silos. The creative industry is working in a silo. The technical industry is working in a silo. We need to blur these silos and start working together. And our forefathers already told us, if you want to go far, you have to go together. So we need to abolish all these silos, start working together, bridging these gaps that exist, and seeing the policy people. We have to, as creative technologists, as creatives, we need to bring in the policy people, have conversations around them. So it's just not about adoption to this technology, it's building the guardrails that would allow this technology to work within confinements of what is considered applicable and legal, looking at it from a value aspect, and also from an adoption perspective. I want to be extremely honest with you. My platform runs on computer vision, which is AI. It's using AI for image recognition. And then there's a graphic user interface that you can be able to build with it. I'm leveraging on this technology as well. And the idea behind me leveraging on it is I've tried to create an opportunity, a financial inclusive opportunity for young people to build on the platform and also get paid while they build on the platform. So as I mentioned, opportunities are not equally distributed. It's incumbent on all of us to build these opportunities. And also there's a role that we don't think about, the role of intermediaries in the creative economy. These are the people who are bridging these gaps. These are the people who are bringing all these things together. How do we empower these intermediaries further? Because they have an overview, bird's eye view of what's happening in the industry, and they can really bring all these elements together. So putting intermediaries at the core, and Lodi mentioned it, when you're looking at all these platforms, when you're looking at infrastructure, these are intermediaries. When I build content, instead of the content sitting on cloud, is there an African-focused platform that can be able to monetize this model? It cost Lodi money to build this. It cost her time. There's sweat equity that she went through. There's things that she cannot monetize. The stress she went through building this. It's very unfortunate that it's sitting on a cloud server somewhere without appreciating what effort she put into it. So we need to blur these silos that we are working in, empower more intermediaries.
Thanks so much for that, Brian. A very impassioned response there. Lodi, yes, we don't want your content to be sitting in the cloud. And I think Brian's got a very good idea there, I must say.
I wanted to say that Brian forgot the blood. It wasn't just sweat, it was blood, sweat, and tears. It was blood, sweat, and tears.
Oh dear, Lodi. Yeah, that's the story of so many creative people on our continent.
Right.
I mean, in a way, I guess you are an intermediary. And I also really liked this point that Brian brought up about silos, because it's also this, it's a theme, I must say, that's run throughout my professional career, that there are so many silos between the different creative industries themselves. And, you know, AI is shifting things at a huge rate. And you're in the position where you're dealing with people who are entering the industry. What is your view on AI? Is it making entry easier? What are your thoughts about it? I mean, obviously within the film sphere, that's a whole very big conversation. But yeah,
it is.
Focused on that.
It is, but I not to make this an AI fest, like we're all lovers of AI. We do know the harms and biases that come with the specific types of AI technologies that have been developed thus far. which is why it's important what Brian is saying, that the innovation and the technologists, one, need to work with the creatives and not work in silos, but they need to innovate on the continent. And the types of AI technologies that are created, or the algorithmic formulas that are created, will speak to those harms and biases that when we talk about AI and there's like a dark cloud, that's what we're referring to. But I mean, not to give away my age, I know I would not have been a filmmaker had they not been HD developed. If there was no digital film technology developed, I would not be a filmmaker. It would still be the realm of older white men shooting in film and going into the lab to go develop the film that they've created. I would not be here. So there was it democratized the space and enabled people like me to enter the space, and even more so the technology that exists in our devices, and the how the camera has, like, it used to be this big and it's like back to here. Maybe the lenses have remained the same, or the lenses are now 360, whatever, things have changed. Were it not for the innovation, I would not be included. And so when we talk about, and I'll speak specifically with regards to film, AI enables us to access VFX in a manner that small productions would not have been able to access 2 years ago. Last month, he's talking about how we're looking at the worst form of the AI. I don't know which technology you were referring to, Brian, but he's saying we are looking at it at its worst. It's not even premium. It's not even what we will eventually be paying for in the future. All of that does allow for more inclusion. It does allow for more people to participate in various spaces of content creation that they otherwise would not be able to access. And for that, we can thank AI. We really can. For that, we can agree that there is a good that exists within this innovation. Perhaps we are a little less aware, unlike the technologist, the extent to which there may be harms and biases, but I know as a content creator, I can see how it can assist processes in production, especially in post-production, that we otherwise wouldn't be able to access. So I sit very squarely in the middle, and depending on what dinner I'm attending, I'm either for AI or I'm very quiet about the extent to which I use it daily in my output of work. Hopefully those people, I've now outed myself. I engage and I use AI quite a lot. I am now at a point where I'm engaging with it so that it learns how I work, so that even my prompts, it has learned how I want what it generates to be specific to my needs, And that is an admission that I have to, I'm making it here. I don't even want to look at some of my peers and colleagues in the eyes next time I see them, because I've admitted such, because it's, how it is. So I'm not, Brian said so many things that I wanted to speak to, but the idea of us not working in silos, the idea of policy not being in place so that the very things that we're afraid of, we can begin to engage with. The idea that the continent is a little far behind with regards to our own AI innovation is sort of good, because maybe the policy and engaging the infrastructure or the safeguards that should be around that innovation with regards to people's, I guess, privacy and how they engage with the technology out there, we still have a little bit of time. But these things work in monopolies. We have time to a certain extent. It's not a bad thing to be just behind the curve at times. So it's a lot of things up in the air. All I know is it's far ahead of me. The people that I engage, that I facilitate in labs, I just know that, and I want them to know that I'm a Luddite in the room. I should know the least. You guys should be teaching me. I cannot be the expert here. And if I'm the expert, something is very wrong. Then you're not doing your own personal work. You're not doing your own research. You're not just dabbling and playing with the software like you should be, even if it's just a little bit. So that's the premise that I give. I should not know more than you. You guys should be teaching me. What I can facilitate is how to go about it, that you should be lobbying, that in fact you have agency to lobby and say, this is what, as a group, if you group yourself, if you organize. So those are the things that I bring, but that's just by virtue of experience, of having worked in a sector, having to advocate for myself, advocate for my rights, understanding how the production pipeline works, whether it's immersive, whether it's gaming. So that's what I bring to the space, and those are the conversations. And I want us to understand that when we talk about AI, we're only ever talking about generative AI. Do you know how many other types of AI exist, and we're not even engaging that? We're talking about generative AI. It's one aspect of it. We live with AI in our houses all the time. So we speak about it in the small thing, and it's way bigger than that. And part of my job, we're talking about intermediaries, is right now one of the themes for Fagugesi in October is that we have to talk about AI. And like what I realized in trying to program for that is very few people know what's happening. They know so little. And that put me at ease. So if you can like just put yourself at ease, they don't know either. Okay? They have no idea. They will also be doing a program on AI. They have no idea either. So be at ease, continue to read and research and dabble with the software, and create spaces where open conversations can happen, where people can admit that I know, or I don't know, or this is as far as we know, or this is as little as we know. So that's what I'm trying to do with what the programming that I do in the festival. And I wanted to say, a platform like this is just amazing. Am I no longer in the room?
No, you are.
You are.
Okay.
You are.
I just can't see you guys anymore. So I wanted to say, and I'll finish quickly. I love what Africalia is doing. I appreciate this conversation, that Selassie and I are familiar, that I will become familiar with Brian, and that Mary can feel a little closer to me. This is the conversations that we need, because the conversations are going to happen beyond this. We should continue. And I know I can lean on Brian as far as he is. I am already leaning on Selassie, because I want one in the labs that we're creating for people to have a Brian speaking to them, because they need to be contextualized. If they're going to figure out, how do I innovate? How do I operate? How do I move about the space? They need to see people that look like them. And so that's part of what I try to do, is like, Brian needs to speak to the people in the lab. Selassie needs to speak to the people in the lab. It doesn't matter at what point in their careers or their production companies are at. The people in my labs need to be able to see themselves, because they're operating on the continent, and they speak true to what's actually, what the space and the sectors actually look like. I don't know if any of that made sense.
It absolutely did, Lodi. Yeah, I think you're talking to a very interesting notion that I have, and I'm getting the sense from Brian and Selassie that we're kind of on the verge of a new technological revolution that AI has ushered in. And everyone's using it, as you say, Lodi, and perhaps not sharing to the extent, but I think everybody is, and becoming quite reliant on it and seeing the advantages. But to wrap up, I thought perhaps to just have a parting shot from each of you, perhaps sharing your thoughts on, given we're at the edge of this revolution, how best can we harness this period? What do you feel can be done to perhaps catalyze more growth of the digital arts in your particular country? Selassie, perhaps you can begin.
Okay, so I guess to wrap up, the main thing would be to always be hungry to learn new skills, ready to upskill. And I think that a running theme is like what Lodi was saying about not being a filmmaker if HD hadn't come in. If there was no Fruity Loops and there was no Premiere, Photoshop and CorelDRAW, I also probably wouldn't have ended up at this point. So technology is a massive enabler, and to be able to harness it, you have to be able to be ready to learn, whether in school or self-taught. You have to be ready to learn, and that is the only way you would be ready for what the future is. Because we're talking about AI and stuff now, but we also know that as like there's this comparison of how there was Smith eating spaghetti, how AI generated that some time back, and how it's now generating and talking about how it can even look like in the future. So you can't even be like one way or be static in how you're learning. You should always be learning and always looking to the future to be ready for what's coming. So that is really the advice that I have with regards to the digital tools and how to be ready for the future. Just learn. University of YouTube premium account, access it, and be on the forefront of the new tools and technologies that are coming out. And I think that another thing is that it must always be aligned to what your personal creative goals are, because pursuing something that that doesn't align with you personally and just pursuing it because it's the makes in the end you might lose that kind of interest. It's like pursuing a job, actually. So that's one of the things I would say. Be ready to learn always. It must also align with your own personal goals so that you can actually go the furthest distance that you need to go with it.
Thanks so much for that, Selassie. Yes, I think the University of YouTube has been very powerful. But yeah, I also think that there is so much on YouTube. It's so hard to know which one is best. Brian, what are your sort of parting shots on this to wrap up?
Parting shots, number one, thank you so much, Africalia, for giving us this opportunity to have such an amazing discourse. I've just been looking at the streams. There's not so many people on the streams, but to be honest with you, I honestly don't care, because just amongst us, we've had such an amazing conversation. And I feel like there's a unique opportunity. Thank you, Africalia, for allowing me to meet amazing speakers and our moderator. And also that this conversation is the beginning of something great. And it's conversations that should happen across a continent. So thank you so much for this opportunity. For me, my real parting shot is really around that we are in the precipice of a technological revolution that will fundamentally change everything in scope, scale, and complexity. The way Africans respond to it has to be integrated and well thought through. And through a community of practice, we can be able to blur these silos. One of the things that I wanted to say is sometimes we think about this huge mammoth and this thing that we need to tackle, but we forget the value of small progress. We can make small progress as we go. And I always say that small hinges swing large doors. This small progress can actually amount to something huge and constructive that can pave the way to the next generation. And as a philosopher and as a believer in the gospel of Jesus Christ, I would just say, as above, so below, as within, so without. This entirely means that anything that has existed here has also existed in the spirit. So we are here by divine design. And it's incumbent on us to make sure that this technology that has come now, we are the chosen people to come up with the solutions around it, the guardrails around it. No one else is going to come from space and help us sort this out. So it is incumbent on us. So this is just for me to say that the power is in our hands for us to mold it the way we do, and we cannot do this alone. We have to do it as a community of practice.
Thanks so much for that, Brian. Very powerful words. Yeah, we've been chosen to lead this revolution. Lodi, yes. What are your final thoughts on this?
Yeah, like Brian just said, I want to congratulate Africalia and say félicitations. 25 ans They've managed to get to 25 years. And in the short time that we've engaged with them at Tshimologong, I hope to never leave the circle that they've created and the access they've managed to facilitate for us to engage with my counterparts, with intermediaries, with people that are creating on the continent. It's so invaluable. We had, for one of their projects, we met in Benin, and just the network of individuals that I met there, I'm going to hold on for the next couple of years of my career. I don't have many years left in this working space that I'm still in. And also, just to the parting shot is I guess it's just speaking to, and I'm worried that the word curiosity seems too simple, but I really want people to just be curious. There really is access online, and if YouTube is not your thing and you like to read academic journals, they are easy to download. Download an academic journal and read that about what people were talking about AI in 1996 versus what they were talking about in 2020 versus what they're talking about right now. Like, if you're really, really curious, if you're really, really interested, like, inform yourself. It really is at your fingertips. Everything can be learned. And this is not just for me, like even younger people. I'm a little worried sometimes when they enter the lab and they're lacking some simple soft skills and even the idea that they have access to it. I just want people to be curious. Like, you can teach yourself anything, and you don't have to wait for anybody to give you permission to be an artist, to get into film, to be a storyteller, to be an animator. You actually, maybe that's it. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for permission from anybody for you to enter a space, especially when it's like nobody's actually defined it. It's not defined yet. There's no specific confines, or it doesn't have a specific shape. Why shouldn't you be part of the people that decide what it's going to look like? Why shouldn't you participate in what its eventual definition is going to be? So just engage, man. That's all I ask. That's all I ask of people who are thinking about innovation, and they think about it as this thing that's far away. It's in fact right in your hand. It's on your wrist. Engage.
Thanks so much, Lodi, and thanks to Africalia, as everyone has said, for allowing this and setting up this conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and I feel very inspired. I'm sure that anybody who listens to this conversation in the future, once it's up on YouTube, will step away feeling like, the three of you are really, having such impact, not only through your own worlds and businesses, but on the next generation, in opening those doors and inspiring them, Lodi, that it's there for the taking. YouTube University is there. As Selassie tells us, Lodi says you don't need permission, but yes, read more, which as a writer, of course, I always urge people to do as well. And we're at the edge of this revolution, and as Brian says, we've been born at this particular time, as our audience has, and I think Africans really just need to exploit the situation and figure out how we can take advantage of it, and educate other arts sectors as well. As Brian said, that there's a block in other art sectors to use and access a digital medium within their work, which we didn't get to discuss, but I think is also very important. So I think I'll end there, and very enjoyable. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you so much, guys, and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, bye.
Underneath starry light, like within this heart of mine. Dreams and hopes, they intertwine. But there's a key I cannot find. A way to free, was trapped inside. A journey way to path and see. To find this truth, to chase the dream of love. I'll search the skies till I'm loved. I'll never die. For every soul has secret sleep. Until our love, I'll never sleep.
Fagugesi 2024 until unlocked.
2nd to the 5th October.
Arcade, expos, showcases, family day, hackathons, plus awards. All things digital.
Tickets on sale, fagugesi.co.za.
Meet Dobison, Ghana's leading media technology company, empowering businesses to increase sales, productivity, and engagement using immersive technologies with online and offline experiences that create strong, profitable relationships with customers. With our range of services and products, businesses can create, manage, and scale meaningful end-to-end immersive content and experiences across all touchpoints and devices, saving them time, resources, and logistical headaches. 360 Africa is Africa's first online virtual travel platform. Explore our library of Africa's cultural and natural heritage and stays in 360-degree views and discover the best travel deals for free. Immersions completely reimagines brand experiences and events through high-definition 360-degree video production and AAA games, and immersive content for VR headsets for ever-expanding social brand experiences. From immersive education and training to entertainment, Immersions is enabling endless possibilities in user experiences. Unbox reality with Dobison.
Welcome to the Silicon Savannah, where real and virtual life is constantly being blurred. A revolution is happening. It's time for young Africans to arise. Welcome to the era of augmented reality, where innovation knows no bounds. Introducing Meteor. Meteor empowers you with 21st century skills, unleashing your potential to create, design, and build AR with no code. As you dive into the world of media, envision an economy where AR becomes the driving force. This is more than technology. This is your chance to shape your destiny, to lead in a world that's constantly evolving. Arise Africa with Meteor. Join the revolution and let's build a future where innovation knows no limits.